Rube, I took a chance. Sometimes you take a chance in life, and I thought I'm about a 5-hour drive from seeing the solar eclipse in totality. I'm going to make an effort, and I did, and the clouds just rejected me.
But I think we're all better when we take those risks in life, when we take those chances, no matter what the outcome.
I like that. This is already an inspirational podcast. This, I should mention, is Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro.
I did something similar. I traveled. I traveled all the way to my backyard, and I don't know if you can. There's a lot of glare there, but yeah, traveled in my backyard. And I got that. So it was a long trip. It took me like 15 seconds, but it was pretty cool. It really was. And I have a lot of friends out in Ohio who were in the path of totality. They had a big party on a rooftop, and then they all walked over and saw the Guardians home opener. It was quite a weekend in Cleveland with the hoops and baseball and everything. So, big times in Cleveland. But I'm sure you probably had a great time, even though you didn't quite see the eclipse.
Yeah, I didn't see the eclipse, but still got the total darkness, which was really cool. And I wasn't even sure how the cloud cover would affect that, but that was almost worth it alone. In a way, it was kind of cool because you don't see it happening, but all of a sudden, it's just about pitch black.
That happens at night also, late afternoon, night, it gets dark out.
Yeah, not normally at 3 p.m.
Well, not in our part of the world, but
yeah. And then it normally lasts longer than 3 minutes.
It does.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Some of those red eyes we took, some of those overnights were pretty quick.
Are you poo-pooing this eclipse?
No, not at all. No,
okay.
I enjoyed it more than I expected to. I thought it was once I looked up and I had the glasses and I looked up and saw the moon in front of the sun. That's when it's like, all right, you see this thing moving. Once you see the celestial bodies actually moving in relation to each other, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Weren't you at the NovaCare in 2017? We all watched it there.
I don't remember. I don't remember. I'm sure I was there. But
I know this will surprise you. I supplied the glasses that day.
I don't remember. What time was it? What time of day was it?
Afternoon. It was a beautiful day, I remember.
Really? Yeah, I have no memory of that. I remember other things from the 2017 season, but I don't remember that.
So this is the last little story about the eclipse. I was at Letchworth State Park in New York, which is a beautiful park. And that's why I went there, because I figured even if the clouds kind of try to ruin it, I'll have a good day. And I did a bunch of hiking, bunch of waterfalls. It was really cool. But the state park, struck so much fear into me about how crowded it was going to be that I got there as the park opened at 7, expecting it to look like Universal Studios. I parked in the biggest parking lot I've ever seen, and I was the only car I was the only person in this park for hours.
Wait, was the parking lot actually bigger than the one next to the NovaCare?
Not quite as big, but it was a giant parking lot, and I'm the only one there, and I was the only one in that park for 2 hours. So I probably over prepared for it a little bit.
That's Dave Zangaro in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, I figured you'd appreciate that. I get to the state park and I'm the only one there.
Yeah.
The workers were surprised to see me.
If you get to Universal Studios when they open, it's not that crowded either. And I've done that.
Okay, good. Yeah. Talking about celestial bodies moving, there are some offensive linemen in this draft who move like that.
That was a reach, but
yeah, it was a reach. We do want to talk some draft stuff. We have a bunch to talk about today, actually. We have some trade up candidates to get to. The Eagles are sitting at 22 in the draft, which is, it's just around the corner here. It's amazing that we're almost here. We know that they don't like to sit and pick where they normally are. So we have some trade up options to look at in the first round. We've got a bunch of questions about DeVonta Smith and his contract status and when that big extension might be coming. So we want to talk through that a little bit. And then last week, we had a chance to catch up with Jordan Mailata at his press conference after his big extension. So we have some takeaways from that. But let's start with some trade up options. Like I mentioned, the Eagles sit at 22. What % chance would you give that they draft a player at number 22?
Maybe 30%.
They like to move. And that's a spot that I think almost like encourages you to move up, because I find it unlikely they have 22 players with like a first round grade. So the idea is you either trade up to get a player you really think is worthy, or you try to trade back if there's like a grouping of players that you have the same grade on.
Yeah. And, if they feel like the draft is stronger somewhere else, they'll get it. He'll get out of 22. Howie is and then one thing I think he told us, I think it was 2 years ago, like he's already done all the work. Like he's already figured out all the potential trades. So when it's draft day and, we're at 14, 15, 16, he's going to have so it's not going to be like, all right, let's try to figure this out now. He's got it all figured out before they get to that pick. So if the opportunity arises, he knows exactly what he's willing to give up and what he's not. And that takes the emotion out of it. It takes the rush out of it, because, 15 minutes in the first round, I think it's still 15 minutes, right? So like nobody's better at moving around. Howie has his strengths and weaknesses as a GM, but I don't think anybody's better at using trades and moving around to increase assets. We've seen him take a 5, trade it for a 4 the next year, it becomes a 3. Before you know it, it's a 2. And it takes 4 years to do that. But when you're confident that you're not getting fired, you can play the long game and make these deals work for you. So I think there's a very good chance that he'll do that again.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, it really starts at the combine for him. He'll start talking to some GMs like, hey, John Schneider, you're sitting at 16. What's it going to take for me to get up there if one of our guys is there? And obviously it's a two-way street, right? Like if that team's player isn't there, then they're more willing to trade back. So it takes both, but the frame, you have to have the framework laid out. Otherwise, like you don't have enough time to come up with a full trade like that. I mean, we're talking like a major trade with serious implications. It's not easy to just slide up and down the board.
Right. I thought you were getting into Contavious Street there, but two-way street. But he only played defense. But anyway, what would you say? Where would you put that number that the Eagles pick at 22?
Yeah, I think it's I'd say about 30-35%. I think it's more likely they don't. I think the most likely scenario is a trade up. And we've seen that. I mean, the last 3 years they've traded up. Although I guess in 21 they traded down and then traded up,
right?
Which would, that's always on the table too. But that was a different situation because they went from 6 to 12 and then 12 to 10. But the last 2 years they've traded up. They traded up for Jordan Davis and then they traded up for Jalen Carter. So I think that's very much in play.
I do as well.
Okay. Let's go through some trade up targets. Do you have one in mind? I have a couple that I have in front of me.
Yeah. And I think there's a certain point where I don't think it's realistic. Like, I don't think he's going to trade into the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes you just see guys, for whatever reason, start dropping. And I think that's when Howie gets like, okay, bring it on, a couple more spots, and we're ready to pounce. Brock Bowers is a guy who, I think a lot of people expect him to go in the top 10, top 12, tight end from Georgia. But the way, and I think you made this point in the last pod, like first round tight ends have not had great success recently. And I think there's a chance a guy like that could start dropping a little bit. Teams might be a little wary of taking a tight end that high. And I think he's a guy who, if he starts drifting down, I think there's a good chance Howie would be interested.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is positional importance. Like I think there are teams in the top 15 that just won't take a tight end there. So I think it is realistic to think of him sliding into that 15 to 20 range. Now, would the Eagles be willing I think they would have to certainly be willing to at least think about taking him at 22. But would they be willing to package picks to move up to get him? That I'm not totally sold on them being willing to do that.
Yeah, I think it depends how they look at him. Do they look at him as a weapon? Do they look at him as a tight end? We don't know what they think of him, but um, I I don't think they would move more than to like 17, somewhere around there. Maybe.
Jaguars. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, you're right. It would be an unusual move, but if they believe he's an unusual talent, then I could see it happening.
Yeah, and there's also like you have to take into account the salary implications because Brock Bowers is going to like it's all slotted pay in the draft. So it's not like positions get paid more. That's something to think about because tight ends are kind of undervalued right now, especially when you're talking about like tell me Travis Kelce is not as valuable as one of the best receivers in the league, but he doesn't get paid like that because of his position, which I think eventually will catch up with those really great tight ends. It hasn't yet. So if you're going to draft Brock Bowers, like you're going to pay him a lot if you're going to draft him in the top 15 picks.
Yeah. And I think he also, what effect is it going to have on Dallas Goedert? I don't know. I wouldn't worry about it, but I think there's a lot of things to take into account there. I think Dallas would probably react better than Zach Ertz did when Dallas was drafted. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of with any trade up. There's a lot to consider. How much you're giving up, contract, the fit. There's a lot to think about.
Since you mentioned Zach Ertz, I did want to mention his concert event is Friday.
Yeah, with Matt from Mount Joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at Brooklyn Bowl, I believe.
Yeah, Matt's a huge Eagles fan.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. It's nice to see Zach still doing things in the Philly area.
Yeah, well, he's got that house for underprivileged kids in Honey Park, I think it is.
Yeah,
he does incredible work. His whole family does.
Mm. All right. My first trade up candidate, and anyone who's listened to this pod for a while will not be surprised. Quinyon Mitchell.
I knew that was coming.
Toledo cornerback. I think that the top two corners have kind of separated themselves. Now, some people have Cooper DeJean in that mix as the third, but I really think it's Terrion Arnold from Alabama or Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. To me, Mitchell has the highest ceiling. I just see like it's hard to poke holes in what this guy does. He blew away everyone at the Senior Bowl, at the Combine. The Senior Bowl was a big step for him facing top tier competition. Whereas, Terrion Arnold, it's a little easier to see it, I think. And by most accounts, Arnold is going to be the first corner taken. Now, their teams have preferences, and it'll never surprise you to see one get taken over the other. So, hey, Mitchell could end up being CB1 in this class. And if so, then I think Terrion Arnold becomes an intriguing trade-up candidate. But whichever corner is not the first one, there might not be a landing spot until you start to get into the 14, 15, 16 range. Look, I know the Eagles have not drafted a cornerback in the first round since 2002, so maybe it's unrealistic to think about them trading up to get one. But if you have the opportunity to get one of these top guys, I think you have to at least entertain the idea.
Yeah, and I think that position is probably the most likely for them to move up, just because of who's there and where we think they're going to go.
I actually disagree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Offensive tackle is the other one.
Yeah.
But I feel like this year might be different. Like, I don't know why. I think Howie has talked. I mean, maybe the Saquon thing is a sign that Howie's not going to stick to his conventions. Maybe that he's ready to try some different things and break out of his narrow patterns of roster construction, which have worked pretty well. I mean, they've gotten by for a long time without elite running backs, really good running backs, but certainly not paying veteran free agent guys. So That's why I think cornerback, this could be the year. But yeah, it's been 2 decades.
The only difference between, and I've tried to draw this um, comparison too, is like he finally paid a running back, but the Eagles thought they saw some market inefficiency in the running back free agency market, whereas like teams are taking corners. It's not like, you know what I mean? I don't know if like the Eagles like to pride themselves on zigging when other teams zag. I don't know if that's happening here. It would just be them bucking
That's
a trend.
fair. That's fair.
Their own trend.
And I think that's for Howie, that's zigging when everyone else is zagging. I mean, for him, that would be. But we'll see. I mean,
That's just zigging against your own zag.
when they, exactly. Howie hasn't taken cornerbacks. He just hasn't taken cornerbacks really anywhere. Just haven't.
Yeah,
drafted.
the last day 2 corners were in 2017.
Rasul.
Now you can argue that Keely Ringo is about as close as you can get to taking a day 2 corner without taking a day 2 corner, because he was early on day 3 and they traded away this year's 3rd round pick, which is a day 2. So it's like as close as you can possibly get.
True.
But still not a day 2 pick.
No, you're right. And what is it? I think Jalen Mills is the only cornerback they've drafted in the last 20 years to start 16 games in a season, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Rasul, I think, started like 8 or 10 one year. Sydney started a handful. But yeah, I think I have one more mock draft, and I think it's going to be a corner. It might be a trade up for a corner. We'll see.
Okay. And you're talking about Sidney Jones.
What did I say? Sidney Brown?
No, you just didn't say which Sidney.
Oh.
And
okay.
we got yelled at one time for that, so I will always
Oh yeah. Yeah.
tongue in cheek mention that.
Sydney. What other Sydneys are there? Not a lot of Sydneys.
Okay.
Who's the singer? Sidney Poitier.
He was an actor.
But he was a singer too.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was.
Sidney Crosby.
Sidney Crosby. Sidney Poitier was. He had positional versatility, certainly.
Okay. Give me another trade up candidate.
Well, we mentioned OTs, and I think there's a couple. I mean, I know you like the guy from Washington, Troy Fatanu. I think he's. I could see them going up a few spots for him. If he starts drifting down,
he's on my list too. I like him. He's he kind of bucks a trend a little bit too, because he's not very big. He's like 6'4", which is short for an offensive tackle. 317 pounds. So he's certainly not Jordan Mailata size, right? Like he's smaller than that. He moves very well. I do like a lot of the tackles who offer a little bit of inside outside flexibility. I don't think you should take a guy because of that necessarily, but I think it's like a little bonus. And everyone's seen it by this point, but the look Jeff Stoutland gave Fatanu as he's finishing up one of the drills at the combine is very funny. It's like just like you can see the wheels turning in Stout's head as he watches this guy move, because he's fun to watch. He's very fluid. Although like being undersized, you better be able to move like that.
Right. And plus you get him with Stoutland and he'll have him 6'7", 350 within like 6 months.
There's a lot of things Jeff Stoutland can do. That is not one of them, unfortunately. And look, I think there's a possibility the lowest Fatanu might go is 16. He's been mocked to the Seahawks quite a bit, and it's easy to see why. Obviously local there, but they brought in the Washington offensive coordinator, Washington offensive line coach to Seattle, to the Seahawks. So yeah, there's a lot of smoke there around him being the 16th pick. So you might need to get ahead of Seattle to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah.
I have another tackle on my list.
Yeah.
J.C. Latham.
He was on my list as well.
Okay. Yeah. From Alabama. And Mike Mulhern, producer Birds Huddle, actually just did his Eagles only mock and had them moving up to 17 to get Latham. Earlier last month, I think I was on Birds Huddle and I was asked the most likely player the Eagles will draft. I think J.C. Latham kind of fits I mean, he just checks a lot of boxes for them. And when you're looking at the tackles in this class, the more I look at them, the more I think they're going tackle, because there are so many guys who have like very unique traits. And to be able to be in range to get one of them this late in the draft is pretty rare. It's just a very good class. Latham's huge. He's 6'6", 342. He like certainly doesn't move as well as like he's a guy who's 6'4", 317, like we just talked about. But for that size, like, yeah, I like it. He has some experience too. Like the difference, like Amarius Mims is a unicorn physically, but it's a big projection, right? Even Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma hasn't played very much. Whereas like Latham to me is a nice mix of the profile, but also some experience at a high level program.
Yeah, I think he's probably one of the safer picks if you're going to trade up. I think, look, if you just go by the math and you mock an offensive tackle, your odds are you're going to be right. Just with how he's, or an offensive defensive lineman, most likely defensive lineman. But yeah, I think he makes a lot of sense. We know how he's obsessed with the SEC, so he checks that box. Yeah.
Do you have anyone else on your list?
No, that's really it. I mean, they're not going to. Those are the names I had that were realistic.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there are other tackles, like, and I think the tackle thing is like, it's really going to come down to preference. What about like, say, a guy like Dallas Turner starts to drop a little bit, which I don't think he will. I think he's a top 10 pick. I think he's going to be the top edge rusher. Would that be someone in your mind as a potential trade up?
I figured he was out of their range, so I didn't put him on my list.
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll be in that 8 to 10 range. I don't know if he's going to get past that. So I don't have
Jared Verse then might be the second edge player.
Absolutely. If again, I don't think that's realistic, but if he did, absolutely would consider that.
Okay. Yeah. You're right. And there are going to be a lot of quarterbacks going early, which is always good for a team that's not quarterback needy.
Yeah, it's so true. And every time a quarterback goes, how he's pumping his fist, because that's everyone else is dropping down a spot.
Yeah. Let's get into the DeVonta Smith contract stuff, because we get a ton of questions about this. It's probably the question I've gotten most all off season. And I think it's because we've seen these other extensions come out. We've seen Landon Dickerson get one. Jordan Mailata get one with 2 years left on his deal. Jake Elliott got an extension. And everyone's wondering, well, DeVonta Smith has to be priority one. Why has this not happened yet? Why hasn't it happened yet, Rube?
I think it's a tricky contract because I think it's hard to assess his value, because I think he's more valuable than his numbers show. He was 20th among wide receivers last year in yards. And since he came in the league in his 3 years, he's 16th. So statistically, he's not a top 10 receiver. Now, he's also a 2, and that plays into it. I think the eye test tells you, he's 25. The eye test tells you he's better than the 20th best receiver in the league. So I think there's a little disconnect between his numbers and his value, and I think that makes it a tricky contract to do. I do think they'll get it done, but I think you can't pay him more than AJ. Probably AJ's at $25 million a year, but I see a guy like Michael Pittman making $23 million, and I think DeVonta is a lot better than Michael Pittman. Since he came in the league, he's like their numbers. I mean, he's averaging like 13.2 per catch. Pittman's like 10.7 yards per target. It's not even close. Touchdowns. So you're looking for a comp. So it's tough to do because these guys are getting a lot of money. And, if DeVonta got more than AJ, and every year contracts are going to go up as the cap goes up, but I think you're asking for trouble. You'd love to just give him exactly what AJ has, but I think it'll be a little less than that.
Even that would be tricky, right?
I think it would be. Yeah.
Like one guy is clearly the better player right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's got to be more than Pittman and less than AJ. Which doesn't give you a lot. It doesn't give you a big window, but somewhere around 23.5 a year. I think would make sense.
Yeah, let me lay out a little bit of the scenario too, if people haven't been following it as closely. Uh, Landon Dickerson and DeVonta Smith are the same draft class, but um, they have that 5th-year option coming for DeVonta. So with Dickerson, he was about to enter the final year of team control, the final year of his contract as a 2021 draft pick. With DeVonta Smith, it's a little different because they have that 5th-year option that they have until May 2nd to exercise that, and they obviously will. He's a good player. They want him here.
If they haven't signed it by then.
If they haven't, yeah. I mean, but they can exercise it and then sign him, right? It's not like, so basically that would be like $15.5 million for the 5th year, which is the 2025 season, right? So they had that little built-in buffer where they didn't have that with Landon Dickerson. So it made sense for them to prioritize Landon in that way. But you're right. I think this is a tricky contract for DeVonta. The other big receiver contract this offseason was the Calvin Ridley, 4 years, $92 million, $50 million guaranteed, which the guarantees are obviously very important. So I think that's tricky. And the receiver market's about to get reset. There are 3 players I'm keeping an eye on: CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and Brandon Ayuk, all set to play 2024 on their 5th-year options. So they're like a year ahead of where DeVonta will be, and those guys are going to get paid. And if I'm DeVonta and I'm DeVonta's agent, you let them get paid.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if they reset the market, then DeVonta's price tag goes up. I don't know why I said that.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I was just reading about Donovan before we started the pod. But I mean, his price tag what's Justin Jefferson, for crying out loud? What are they going to – the Eagles should feel lucky they didn't draft him. They don't have to worry about getting him. That was really smart thinking on Howie's part.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, where would you rank DeVonta in the NFL? Like Mike Evans, Mike Evans has put up significantly better numbers. I think he's right around 25 million.
I'd have. You mean where would I rank him in terms of play?
Just in terms of play.
In terms of play,
he's taken age into account as well.
Yeah, I'd say like top 12-ish.
Yeah, I think that's the number for me. I think 12 is a good number.
Yeah, I mean, and you can argue top 10.
You can.
You can certainly argue that. I don't think that's crazy. I know DeVonta thinks he's top 10. The numbers are a tricky thing because mouths to feed, and AJ is going to get his production, and it makes it a trickier comparison. And then you look at the best number 2 receivers in the league, and Jalen Waddle certainly has a case to be made for that next to Tyreek Hill. But I think DeVonta, you have to kind of use the eye test with them a little bit. And I'm still very confident he's going to get an extension at some point. They're going to figure this out. You have a nice little runway to get it done. It's not like it has to get done right now.
And there's some numbers that really illustrate just how good he is, like depth of target, average depth of target, stuff like that. I mean, he's not catching 5-yard passes. I mean, he's running difficult, mid-range routes, and
sometimes he should be, by the way.
Oh yeah. Well, that's another story. That's another question, but there is a new offensive coordinator, but he tracks the deep ball really well. There's a lot of analytics that really illustrate just how effective he's been, success rate, all that stuff. I think tells you that he's better than the 20th best receiver in the game. Yeah.
And this plays out in negotiations.
Sure.
So we'll see how that goes.
And look, if AJ wasn't here, I mean, DeVonta would be catching 110 balls for 1,400 yards. I still think he's got like a 1,250-yard season with AJ. In the right offense, if Jalen has a consistent year and Kellen Moore turns out to be the coordinator the Eagles are hoping he is, and Saquon can really take some pressure off the passing game by being an authoritative runner. I think there's a lot of things that, if they happen, DeVonta could have a huge season.
Yeah, and the offense has to be elite. It can't be top 10, like they want to shout from the like Nick Sirianni is put on billboards around the city. The top 10 is not good enough for this collection of talent. And I think the production will go to everyone if it's an elite offense. And I think DeVonta, if he plays this year on the rookie contract, stands to make a lot of money from a big season.
Yeah. I mean, there's no rush for him. Oh, I mean, the Eagles are certainly more we want to get this done, where DeVonta and his representatives are going to be like, well, if the number's right, sure, but there's no harm in waiting. Someone's going to pay him.
You mentioned the dynamic between him and AJ. Like, they're so close. They are buddies. I don't think it's ever been an issue on the field, but I don't think it's unrealistic to think that the money could become an issue, and they have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think unless you've been in that position, it's hard to understand that. But just talking to guys in the locker room, like everyone in the locker room knows how much everyone else makes. Everyone. And they know how much.
It's got to be, like, in general, like, what a weird workplace dynamic.
I know.
Like, imagine if we walked in this office and, like, above everyone's head it said how much money they make. Or, like, think about your office, right? Like, you go into your office on Monday morning and all of a sudden you know what every single person makes. And you look at Joe in accounting and you think, why is Joe in accounting making more than me? I'm way more important to this company.
Yeah. Oh, it's a real thing. And
I really hope we don't have a Joe in accounting here. I tried to pick the most.
There's always a Joe in accounting.
That's probably true.
But no, I think it's a very real thing. And you're right. Like, they're very close. They work out together. They train together. They do their interviews together. Their lockers are next to each other or near each other. But yeah, it can come between guys, and we've seen that happen. And
it might not even be personal between the two of them, but like their agents know that.
Well, we saw him. I'll never forget when I think Lito was in a contract negotiation, and his agent. I apologize if I'm getting the details wrong. His agent was like, "Well, he's better than Sheldon Brown," and like so the next day we go to the locker room and they're standing at their lockers joking about it. He's like, "I talked to him. He's better than me."
Yeah, and like I think that's important to remember. Like, a lot of times it doesn't even. When I say it could cause a dynamic, I don't mean between the players, but in negotiations it can.
Exactly. Yeah.
That really happened?
It really happened.
You said it publicly?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
And yeah, Sheldon was not happy. And they were super close. I mean, they came in together, they were rookies together. I'll find that story. I hope I'm not making it up, but they both handled it really well.
I mean, he was right.
Well, I don't know. They were very different kind of players. I mean,
they were definitely different. That's a tricky thing to just say he's better.
Yeah, Sheldon, and that's probably not but Sheldon was a lot. I mean, he didn't take the risks. He didn't take the chances. He didn't jump the routes like Lito, but he was really solid. He was great against the run. He was a terrific cover corner, and he had a lot of interceptions. He didn't have a ton of pick sixes like Lito, but the interception numbers were comparable. So it's an interesting question. I think Sheldon was the more complete player. Lito was the guy who was showing up on highlight reels.
Yeah, might be true.
I didn't see that on the budget for the podcast. Compare Lito and Sheldon. But I also think it's really good to have that dichotomy between your two corners, to have different skill sets.
Maybe. I always think that way with receivers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I think that way about corners.
I think it helped them. But anyway, we're way off the rails.
Yeah. AJ, by the way, has 3 years left on his deal. He's under contract through 26. So if you're thinking, pay DeVonta, give AJ a bump so that it all works, probably unrealistic right now for that to happen.
Right now, but
next year,
yeah,
that would be possible.
And that cap is, I mean, the projected cap numbers for the next couple of years are astronomical. So, yeah.
The only thing that slows down the NFL is a global pandemic.
It did.
It did. That was the one, and that was such a weird year because everyone kept expecting the cap to rise, and then it didn't. But now they're back on track to where they thought they'd be. This is not on our budget either, but since we're talking about 2021 picks, would you think about extending Milton right now? I think I would.
Hmm. Yeah, it wouldn't cost much.
Yeah, and that's the point. Like, I think Milton has been a better player than his production suggests. I think he's been a really solid guy. And I think there should be a little bit of fear that he has not a fear. It'd be a good thing if he has a good season production wise, but I think his price tag would raise too.
Yeah, he might want to go somewhere where he could be a starter.
Yeah,
He might
and
want
he
to
might
look.
want to bet on himself a little bit more.
He might want to bet on himself a little bit, and he's never gonna. I mean, he plays a lot of snaps.
Plays a lot of snaps, and I think he's gonna be really good in his defense. I think he really fits.
Yeah, I really like.
I also think he's versatile enough to fit in a lot of defenses.
He's a good dude, man. I like talking to Milton. He's got this supreme confidence about him, and I think he backs it up. He's not going to be a great player, but he's really solid, really consistent. Um, he's a valuable piece.
He is. Just turned 25, actually, a few days ago.
Happy birthday, Milton Williams.
Yeah. Happy birthday to Milton. Had half a sack last year, which is like, to me,
You'd rather have none.
Huh?
You'd rather have none than half.
No. I was gonna say, like, that's so silly. Like, no, I think you'd rather have half than none.
Because half makes it sound like you're trying. If you don't have any, it's like, well, I wasn't trying. I wasn't going after sacks.
They're all trying, but like, I thought he had a pretty good season. I think the sack number
better in 22, but that's everybody.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
But he's a really good, solid player.
Yeah. 3 years in, I've been impressed by him. He's been pretty durable too.
That's true. Yeah.
All right, let's take a break.
Snap numbers in front of you or no?
His snap numbers. Yes, he played the most of his career last year, 494. Previous 395 in 2022. 2021 was 456.
Yeah.
Played around 43% of their snaps last year.
Yeah, that's like Ursat. I mean, he's not a starter, but
he was really. I mean, a lot of the season he did start.
He did. I mean, especially with Fletch gone. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that whole position shapes up as far as snaps.
It is funny because Jalen Carter technically started one game.
Yeah.
Which shows you their deference to playing veterans.
Right.
Even like Jalen Carter can't start.
It's true. He will this year.
Yeah. Like they would come out with, most of the time it was, if they were four-man, it was Fletcher and Jordan Davis. But when it was Fletcher, Jordan, and Milton.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. We have more on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. On Friday, we got a chance to talk to Jordan Mailata at his press conference after getting a big contract extension, 3 years, $66 million, keeps him under contract with the team through 2028. Always good to talk to Jordan.
It is. He deserves it. Great guy. Getting better. And it's an investment that makes a lot of sense.
He was in Italy on his honeymoon, a delayed honeymoon, by the way. He got married last summer, but then training camp got there and they pushed it off. He was in Italy for a few weeks, and that's when the Eagles reached out. So his agent reaches out to him and says, hey, they're interested in doing this. And Jordan said, yeah, you take care of it. I'm on my honeymoon, and that's what happened. But he was also on his honeymoon during the whole free agency process. So when Landon Dickerson got paid, his good buddy, when the Eagles signed Saquon and made all these big moves, he was in Europe kind of like following along like the rest of us.
Yeah. And it's funny how like stuff that can seem so important when you're in Philadelphia, like once you're like touring like 14th century cathedrals and, boat trips down the Rhine or whatever in the Mediterranean. Uh, you feel a little bit separated from it, but yeah, I know he was really excited, and he should be. And yeah, it was a sequence of really big moves on offense in a row. I really liked his, and like you said, it's always fun talking to him. He's probably the guy that I don't know who. I mean, I just liked hanging out in that part of the locker room, like last year. Like, you have Kelsey back there, you have Mailata. They're just guys you're always going to have something interesting to say about football or not. And Jordan is just one of the most interesting people look at his background, just one of the more interesting people that I've covered in all my years doing this. I was really struck by what he said about Philadelphia and how, he's been here long enough now to understand what it takes to be popular and to succeed in this city. And for a guy that's not even from this country to get that, which is something a lot of players, even from Philly, don't get, that was really striking to me. And he was really passionate about it, just how you better play the way Eagles fans expect you to play, how they want you to play, or you're not going to make it here. And it's true.
I think the thing that hit me most from that press conference was that in Italy, when he's like at these really nice, fancy hotels, like living kind of like a lavish lifestyle, he said it was the first chance he got to kind of reflect on his journey a little bit, because I think we do that with him so much. Like everyone else thinks about his story, and like it's hard to like watch him play football and not think that guy didn't know what American football was a few years ago, and he's playing at such a high level. But you kind of understand why he can't do that, why he can't think about his journey, because he has to worry about blocking Micah Parsons, right? Like he has a lot on his plate. So in a way, I was kind of happy for him that he got a chance to reflect a little bit on how far he's come.
Yeah, that's true. That was a little surprising to hear that, because it's something, pretty much every conversation we've ever had about Jordan Mailata starts with, he never played football before they drafted him, which is still blows my mind. But yeah, he's just a great guy. Just happy for him.
Yeah, and part of me wonders, like we've talked about the NFL and their expansion worldwide. I'm not surprised there aren't a lot of other Jordan Mailatas. It has to be a perfect storm of circumstances to make it work. And I'm not saying there aren't other guys. Like it took first finding a guy who's 6'8" with the ability to put on be like 370 pounds, who moves like that. Like those guys aren't everywhere. They're out there somewhere. It's like it's a little comparable to like Joel Embiid stories. Like here's this super athletic dude who's a world away, and you figure it out. But it so much of it comes down to that guy just being willing to sacrifice to make it happen. I don't know how many guys will be willing to do all that.
I think, yeah. And I think, you got to be a little crazy to play football too. Like you got to find guys. Like I think a lot of people who have the physical traits to be an offensive lineman in the NFL who grew up in the U.S., they grow up watching football and being indoctrinated into the culture of playing tough and being tough. And you could get a guy that size from France who hasn't had that. That's what I think makes Jordan so, and that's where the rugby thing comes in. He already had that toughness ingrained in him, where, because it's not enough to just find a guy who's 6'8", 370. He's got to have the right mentality. He might even really be a great learner and have great technique, but if you don't have that physical toughness to be able to go out there, like you said, and block Micah Parsons, none of that matters. So that's that perfect storm that you talked about. It's not just the size and the athleticism, but it's really embracing what it takes to be a pro football player, the toughness, the aggression. And he certainly has that. And I think that all goes together. So I think finding someone with all those traits it's near impossible.
Yeah. Imagine though, being 6'8", 370 and working a desk job. It's gotta be a tough life.
Yeah. I mean, imagine being like 7'1" and people are like, "Hey, do you play basketball?" And the guy hates basketball. Like, no, he's
Yeah.
just, I'm an electrician, you know.
I once saw like a meme, and I think this guy's like he's like a really tall guy and he has little business cards. So whenever someone asks him about his height, he just like hands him the card and says, "Yes, I'm tall. No, I don't play basketball." Like, yeah.
It's a good idea. Whether it's true.
This might surprise you. I've never had to deal with that.
Who's the tallest person you've ever met?
Yao Ming.
You met Yao Ming?
Mhm.
Interesting.
How about you?
Where'd you meet Yao Ming?
Uh, when I was working down in Houston, there was like an event he showed up to. Yeah, didn't like chat with him, but met him.
Interesting. I remember being at an Eagles Falcons game at the Georgia Dome, and we left the locker room after the locker room closed, and Jeff Lurie was in that little lobby by the elevator, in the Georgia Dome. It used to be where he may have left out of the locker room, and he was standing in a group of like 5 or 6 people, and one of them was 7'4".
Wow.
And I mean, because we were like, you don't want to just say to the guy, who are you? What. But I learned later that he played like in NAIA or like JUCO or something. He wasn't like a big time, but he's the tallest person I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, 7'4" is pretty crazy.
He was. But you think at 7'4", like why are you not like playing division? Because other things go into being good than how tall you are.
It's fun when Embiid is at the Eagles games and he'll walk on the sidelines because you forget like there's levels to this. Like he's walking next to giant humans, but no, like that's different. He's much bigger than that.
He walked right by us when we were doing stand-ups last year at one of the games, and I mean, I've been to Sixers games, I've seen him play, but like I realized that's like I haven't covered the Sixers since he's been on the team, and that's like the closest I've been to him, like 3 or 4 feet. And he walked by. It was the same day Shady was there on the field, and they walked by in opposite directions, like a minute apart. I'm like, man, that would be a really interesting meet. Like, I don't know, have they ever met? What would they talk about? But they went different directions. But just seeing people that big is like, how does he not score 70 every game?
The other guys are pretty big too.
That's a really good point. Yeah. It is great to have him back though, because I can actually watch Sixers games now without screaming at the TV.
You still don't scream at the TV?
I don't. And I'm becoming a pretty big Kelly Oubre fan. He's given this team a lot, but that's probably not on our budget.
It is not, but we don't have anything else on our budget. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's not true. I forgot. Fletcher Cox today. After we end this podcast, I'm heading over to the NovaCare complex. Fletcher Cox is having his retirement presser. Nothing to announce. I mean, we've known for a while that he's retiring. My guess is that he didn't want to follow Jason Kelce's presser, which I can't blame him either. I'm curious to see. Fletcher hasn't been like the most like loquacious guy since he's been here, but it is cool that he's doing something, and I'll get a chance to I'm sure thank the organization and his teammates and all that. And I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah. And the thing about Fletcher, like Fletcher speaks when he needs to speak. He picks his spots. And that's something I always respected about him. Like, you can go a long time without ever hearing from him. We wouldn't see him in a locker room, but when he knows it's time to make his presence known, he does it. And I thought his leadership this past year was on another level, and they needed it so bad. Now, look, it didn't pay off in wins, but we talk so much about Kelce and how much they're going to miss him. Man, they are going to miss Fletcher a lot as well.
Yeah, in a way, it's like his retirement kind of got overshadowed.
Yeah,
by Kelce, but and like I think for that reason, like I think a lot of fans have like come to grips with Kelce not being here just because it's been on the front of their minds. But it's gonna be weird not having Fletcher Cox around either.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, both these guys have been here for over a decade and just all-time greats. future Eagles Hall of Famers, at least one in the Hall of Fame, the other maybe. Um, that Kelsey press conference was. I've never covered anything like. I've never been at anything like that. That was
I don't
like
think
one.
there's been anything like that.
It was so emotional, and for knowing him since he was a rookie, um, and seeing him up there like just fighting back tears. I mean, that was like they don't teach you in journalism school, like
And losing.
yeah, they don't teach you like
He
how
was
to
fighting those tears, and those tears were winning.
they were, and then you look out over at Travis, and you're like, there's Travis Kelce sitting over there in the NovaCare complex, and how weird that was, and he's crying, and it was. Taylor Swift was in the back row crying. The whole thing was just. Oh wait, she wasn't there. No, she wasn't there. But yeah, that was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I don't think Fletch's pressure will be quite as emotional or dramatic.
Yeah. And look, from a selfish perspective, I'm excited to wish him well in person and thank him for his time, because like it's our job to bother these guys like daily. Like, how many times have I bothered Fletcher Cox in the last however many years? So I appreciate his time, and I do wish him well. So it's nice from a selfish perspective to be able to tell him that and to say good luck in whatever's next.
Yeah, and I don't think he'll be a guy we see around a whole lot. I think Kelsey we will.
I think Fletcher has even said he's lived here for a while, but then he's probably gonna move. I mean, he has his ranch in Texas is massive.
It's huge. Yeah.
I forget how big it is. I'm gonna look it up. It's crazy big. It's outside of Dallas, like a couple hour drive outside of Dallas, but 1,500 acres over the West Fork Trinity River. So yeah, he's got plans down there.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's into, drag racing, I guess it is. I mean, he's an interesting guy. He's got a lot of interests. I'm really curious to see what he does. He'll be good at whatever he does.
Yeah. He's also a guy who, like, I think most of us saw the Kelsey retirement coming. Fletcher to me was a guy who I thought would play a couple more years. Like during this season, You're watching him play, and he talked about his body breaking down. Like for him, that means he missed a couple games. Like it's not, he was very durable. So I always respect someone when they walk away with more left in the tank and they prioritize like, no, this is the right time for me.
Yeah. And what's crazy is the Eagles haven't had a player who spent their entire career with the Eagles, who made a Pro Bowl and spent their entire career with the Eagles and then retired since Mike Quick. And now they've had two in a month, or a couple weeks.
It is really cool.
Yeah. And, maybe Lane and BG will join that club.
Yeah.
At some point.
Pretty good about both of them, honestly.
BG's not going to play anywhere else. We know that.
Yeah.
And Lane, I think there's a very good chance he won't. So
can the Eagles?
One guy you thought could sign somewhere else.
Sure.
And yeah, I don't think there's any chance Kelsey ever plays again. Fletcher, I'd give a 5% chance. I think there is a slight chance.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I don't think there's any chance Kelsey does.
Question for you: can the Eagles invent more numbers, because they might need to?
It's hard to retire numbers. The league frowns on it because there's a limited number. That's the problem the Yankees have. The Yankees have like 10 numbers left. They retired like 50 guys. So,
I mean, they're in a tough spot here.
They are.
Like, no one can ever wear 62 again.
No.
Can someone wear 91?
Not for a long time if they ever do. But like you said, you can't
retire all these numbers.
You can't
go kind of like fake retired Shady's number.
Right. They don't give 12 out.
12's retired.
Randall's number's retired?
I believe so, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think it's fake retired. I could be wrong. I don't think they ever retired Randall's number.
Oh, no, they didn't. Yeah.
They just don't give it out. I think Ben Brown had it in training camp one year, and that was the end of that. But yeah, there's not enough numbers, and I guess you could start using fractions.
Like, are the Eagles going to propose like to the competition committee, like we're going to go to the triple digits now? They got 0 in there.
They did. You go to triple digits, it would help. It would open up, a lot of new numbers.
You need long names though for the triple digit.
You would.
You need
So Albert O could get,
Albert O could get a triple digit. Yeah,
155.
But think about it. Like they took forever to give out Selleck's number.
Yeah.
Which, like, we love Brent, good player, but like you can't shadow retire that number.
Right.
They haven't given out 71, right?
Nope. I mean, it's only been a few years, but you can't retire all these numbers. Yeah.
Maybe I'll wait a year to ask Jeff Lurie that at the owners' meetings.
It's an interesting question. Could be a good column.
Yeah, it is. They're running out. All right. And we're running out of time too. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button, subscribe there as well. Any final words, Reuben?
I have no final words.
Lovely. All right. Take care, everyone. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.